Morning, Marjorie.
Morning, Neville. It's been a long time.
I've been away with my squadron. How are you?
Well, very well. Room service. Madam. Madam.
Neville George Cleveley Heath was a plausible con man who used an array of impressive-sounding aliases. On the day of his first murder, Heath had been seen drinking with a group of journalists in Fleet Street. After spending the afternoon in a private drinking club, he moved on to the Trevor Arms in Knightsbridge. It was here he was first seen in the company of Marjorie Gardner.
Neville Heath was one of the most curious murderers of his time. He was an incredibly good-looking man, and one journalist I talked to at the time of the murders, who had interviewed Heath and drank with him, said that Heath was so good-looking that he could go into a room at a party and go to bed with practically any woman he chose. And his theory was that Heath had got so tired of, ordinary sex that he simply got more and more kinky and sort of, he thought moved on to spanking or something, and then finally moved on to full-scale, full-blown sadism.
The manner of Marjorie Gardner's murder offers vital clues to Heath's possible motive. The sadistic nature of his crime and the extensive mutilation of the body points to killing for sexual gratification.
He'd almost certainly known Marjorie Gardner once before, and they'd pretty certainly had sort of cooperative sadistic sex. She was a masochist who liked being eaten. They'd had that in some central London hotel where the manager had come in because she was screaming.
After the frenzied killing, Heath prepared and executed his escape calmly.
Afterwards, there's been this sort of enormous release of tension. It may well be that he obtained enormous pleasure from what he did. And there are some sadistic killers who actually describe the act of killing itself as like a sense of orgasm, or even beyond sexual release and orgasm. So that's now over. And for many of these individuals, this is something which has been pre-planned and organised, and it's cool, calm and collected again. He's detached. Many of these individuals, it's as if their physiology, the way that their mind and bodies work is not the same as most people. He's got nothing to feel ashamed about in his mind. He's done what he came for, and now it's time to effect his escape. Coolly, and the best way to do it is look totally normal. And this man is equipped with a sort of constitutional makeup, which makes it easier for him to do that anyway.
On the morning of Friday, the 21st of June, Heath rang his girlfriend.
Yes, I know my name's in the paper. I had dinner with her, that's all. There's been a terrible mistake.
Heath's girlfriend Yvonne was completely taken in. Heath didn't act nor talk like a man who'd just committed a savage murder. He'd shown sympathy for the victim, even offered assistance to the police, giving his version of the events surrounding the murder in a letter he posted to Scotland Yard.
If you think about it, this is a con man, as well as being a sadistic killer. This is a man with a long history of cons, some of which are successful, some of which aren't. And of course, he has a criminal history in which he's been convicted of offences where his cons have gone wrong. So I think this is another one of his cons going wrong. Many of these individuals the conning is compulsive.
As speculation mounted about Heath's whereabouts, Group Captain Rupert Brooke, as he was now calling himself, was blending into the midsummer crowds in Bournemouth. Heath had also started to develop a relationship with a young ex-Wren by the name of Doreen Marshall. For Doreen, the relationship would prove to be fatal. Again, with the murder of Doreen Marshall, Heath had satisfied his sadistic urges. But had he intended to kill her?
I'm pretty certain that Heath did not intend to kill, although what I do think is that after the death of Marjorie Gardner, he was, like so many killers of this type, carried away by it and by a desire to do it again. Now, the girl he chose, in fact, Doreen Marshall, was the sort of girl who looked as if butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. You know, a sort of nice, sweet, middle-class girl, rather shy. And for Heath, murdering this woman and doing the same kind of thing to her that he'd done to Marjorie Gardner would, in a sense, be the ultimate thrill.
Heath had made no attempt to be discreet with the woman who was to become his second victim, and this while he was being hunted in connection with another murder. So why the risk?
When Heath was on the run, and when he met Doreen Marshall, in a sense, he had decided to commit suicide. He decided that his career was over. He wasn't probably going to get away with the murder of Marjorie Gardner. I think that when he saw Doreen Marshall, he decided, as it were, to go out with a bang.
If the act of killing Doreen Marshall was indeed a prelude to suicide, Heath's actions following the crime took him even closer to his goal. He paid a visit to the local police station. Announcing himself as Group Captain Rupert Brooke, he told Detective Constable George Souter that he'd be happy to look at a photograph of Miss Marshall to establish if indeed it was the same woman he'd met. He appeared entirely at ease when confirming it was the girl he'd entertained at dinner and that he could offer no explanation about her fate. His story was plausible, but the events of the next few minutes sealed his fate. You see, the sister of Doreen Marshall, Mrs. Cruikshank, was also paying a visit to the police station. And when Heath saw her, he broke out in a cold sweat. But why? He'd never met Doreen's sister before.
First of all, the officer in charge trapped him by saying, well, you certainly do bear a resemblance to this wanted man Heath, don't you? The picture that's appeared in the papers. And he, not knowing that in fact no pictures had appeared in the papers, said, oh yes, several people have remarked on that, immediately branding himself as a liar with something to hide. And then at this moment, into the station walked the sister of Doreen Marshall together with the father. And for a moment they looked so similar that he was absolutely shattered and apparently actually began to sweat and then pulled himself together fairly quickly. But when they'd seen that, they knew that he was the killer.
In English law in 1946, a person could only be tried for one murder at a time. The Crown decided to prosecute Heath for the murder of Marjorie Gardner. Neville Heath's trial began on the 24th of September 1946. He pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity.
But there was a fairly good case to be made that a man who could do that kind of thing was in fact insane. But, you know, it just doesn't wash. It was quite obvious to the various doctors who examined him that he was perfectly sane and balanced. I mean, he was just downright bad.
The jury took just 59 minutes to find him guilty. Neville George Cleveley Heath was sentenced to death. Throughout the whole proceedings, Heath maintained an air of indifference.
The reason that Heath was indifferent in court and indifferent to his death sentence is that he knew after he killed Doreen Marshall that he was at the end of the road. He was already basically suicidal. That's why he decided to have, as it were, one last fling, killing Doreen Marshall.
On the 16th of October 1946, Albert Pierpoint arrived to escort Heath to the gallows. The condemned man reportedly said, "Come on, boys, let's get on with it." Heath accepted the traditional offer of a glass of whiskey to steady the nerves, adding the words, "Better make it a double." At 9 a.m. in the grounds of Pentonville Prison in London, Neville Heath was hanged by the neck until he was dead.